Buenas noches para todos los que necesiten interpretación en español. Si por favor presionan el globo en la parte baja de su pantalla para poder asistirles.
All right, good evening, everyone. We're so excited to have you here at Talking Tea. As we get started this evening, we want to do a quick cluster roll call just to see who all is in the Zoom with us this evening. So if you could put the name of your school or organization in the chat features, just would like to know what schools our APS students are coming from. So if you could just go ahead and click in the chat and let us know what schools you're representing this evening as we get started. All right, I see E. Rivers, a couple Bolton Academies. Who else do we have? Sarah Smith. North Atlanta, Jackson Elementary, Brandon Sutton, Helping Empower Youth. Another E. Rivers. Lots of families tonight. We're so excited to have everybody with us tonight. And as we get started, I'll go over a couple of our chat norms for the evening, and then we will go ahead and get started with Dr. Baker Jones. So, just a couple of our group norms. So you will remain muted until we have our breakout rooms this evening. There will be an opportunity for everybody to speak inside of those rooms. Our chat this evening will be recorded. It will only be used internally. It's just for our office to be able to keep track of our notes. The breakout rooms will be approximately 20 minutes, and the APS staff will be here to listen. We're really interested in gaining insight from you all and looking forward to hearing your voices. And lastly, please just be courteous and respectful of everyone's opinions. We're so excited to hear you tonight, and I will pass it over now.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our North Atlanta Talking Equity Atlanta Tea. I am Dr. Tauhida Baker-Jones, Chief Equity and Social Justice Officer for the Atlanta Public Schools, and I'm joined by our esteemed board member, Cynthia Briscoe-Brown, who has some opening and welcoming remarks, and I will turn it over to her.
Good evening, everybody from the North Atlanta cluster. And thank you for joining us tonight for tea, Talking Equity Atlanta. I'm Cynthia Briscoe-Brown. I'm one of your APS at-large board members and a North Atlanta parent, a former North Atlanta parent, but I think once a North Atlanta parent, always a North Atlanta parent. I'm honored to be part of this relevant and timely conversation. We've all heard the word equity, and we've been talking about it a lot recently. But tonight, our district leaders will share what that word means for APS and why we believe it should be at the forefront of our work. We also want to hear from you about how we can work together to create a culture that encourages excellence for every student, regardless of whether they are affluent or marginalized, Black, brown, or white, identifying as he, she, or they, or diverse in their abilities. Every single student deserves an equitable chance at success. And now I'd like to introduce our wonderful superintendent, Dr. Lisa Herring.
So thank you, board member Briscoe-Brown. It is always good to be able to come together and have the opportunity to join in these very important conversations. I want to also give a major recognition to our Center for Equity and Social Justice and our Chief Equity and Social Justice Officer, Dr. Tauhida Baker-Jones and team. And then, of course, a special recognition to all of you who found it important enough to join us this evening. So thank you. We know that the past school year has not been easy for any of you. And some families were managing online learning while working a full-time job, while also working to help ensure that your children were well. Others struggled to put food on the table as businesses closed and their jobs were lost due to the pandemic. And despite this, each of you still worked hand in hand with Atlanta Public Schools to make the success of our students a top priority. And I cannot say this with any more intention and sincerity than I could possibly muster up, but just simply saying thank you. And I do mean that sincerely. And I mean that on behalf of the children that we serve. And I mean that for those of you who have gone above and beyond to make this a very powerful and transformative year in spite of all of our challenges. With your engagement and support, we have navigated through uncharted territory successfully, and we are excited about the year ahead, a new year, if you will. During our recent Reimagine APS cluster meetings, we briefly touched on equity, and I hope that some of you who are with us tonight might remember that. So tonight, we're going to continue that conversation to ensure every child is ready for post-secondary success, whether that's a four-year college, junior college, or trade school, or career options. We need and we must prepare each one of them based on their unique skills and needs. In our Center for Equity and Social Justice, as I shared earlier, which is led by our very own Dr. Tahita Baker-Jones, will be a part of this courageous work, and we will get it done. And so here's a quick hello and introduction of her awesome team in the Center for Equity and Social Justice.
Niao, and greetings.
Hola y bienvenidos.
Bonjour.
Aloha.
Namaste.
Sawabona.
Konnichiwa.
Guten Tag.
Marhaban.
Ciao. Hujambo.
Hello.
My name is Quentin Stroud, as the Equity Policy Analyst working at the Center for Equity and Social Justice.
Mi nombre es Joana García y soy la especialista en la comunidad Latinx en el Centro de Equidad y Justicia Social.
My name is Quentin O'Neill, the Coordinator for Supply Diversity with the Center of Equity and Social Justice.
My name is Ashley Reese, and I am the Administrative Manager in the Center for Equity and Social Justice at Atlanta Public Schools.
My name is Larry Wallace. I am the Executive Director of Federal Programs in the Center for Equity and Social Justice here in Atlanta Public Schools.
My name is Deirdre Smith, Organizational Ombuds with the Center for Equity and Social Justice.
My name is Stacy Wyatt. I'm the Executive Director of Equitable Learning Environments at the Center for Equity and Social Justice.
I'm Rhonda Hudson, the Coordinator of Equitable Student Support Services in the Center for Equity and Social Justice.
I am Gina DeVoe. I am the Coordinator of Equitable Schools and Academics in the Center for Equity and Social Justice.
My name is Natasha Speed, Executive Director for Equitable Resource Strategy in the Center for Equity and Social Justice.
My name is Keisha Copeland, and I am the Director of Family Engagement in the Center for Equity and Social Justice.
My name is Katisha Kennebrew, and I'm the Program Director for Equity Strategy in the Center for Equity and Social Justice at Atlanta Public Schools.
And looking forward to joining you at T.
Bienvenidos al T.
Welcome to T.
Welcome to T.
Welcome to T.
Welcome to T.
Thank you for joining us for T.
Welcome to 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 T.
Hello, my name is Dr. Tahita Baker-Jones, and I'm the Chief Equity and Social Justice Officer for the Center for Equity and Social Justice at Atlanta Public Schools. Welcome to T.
And so I think that is, listen, it's so appropriate to do some level of acknowledgement and appreciation for such a great introduction to ladies and gentlemen. And I think it's important to say to this audience, quite honestly, our first rollout, even with our first T of the Center for Equity and Social Justice dynamic team of rock stars and leaders. And I know for me, that this is the manifestation of a dream for our organization and the right work for all of our children here in APS. And so I hope that you, as you saw those faces and pull names, will find opportunities to engage with our Center for Equity and Social Justice leaders. And of course, the T will allow for us to do just that as we manage that over the next several weeks. At APS, our mission is, and many of you may know it already, through a caring culture of equity, trust, and collaboration, every student will graduate ready for college and career. Dr. Tahita Baker-Jones, our Chief Equity and Social Justice Officer, and I are working closely together to plan and strategize what the work of equity and social justice means for every child. And that is important work that we believe is necessary for us to ensure that every child in APS has the resources that they need to be successful. We recognize that importance, and we want to do this well. And in order to do this well, we need your help. Let's first look at what we've already committed to doing as an APS family and what our vision is for our work. Our vision is a high-performing school district where students love to learn, educators inspire, families engage, and the community trusts the system. To bring these words to life, equity must be the through line, and we realize that. To reach the mission and vision, we aim to grow each subgroup, not continually compare one subgroup against each other. That's not the goal. We acknowledge that APS has one of the largest achievement gaps between race and class of students, but we are growing students. Achievement for all students means that we will have seen growth in ELA and math. Milestones performance by 5% between 2017 and 2019 help show some indicator of growth. Achievement for all students grew in ELA and math, and that's an indicator. Black students grew 6% in math and 5% in ELA between 2017 and 2019. The reverse trend was true for our Latinx Hispanic students. Performance for white students grew roughly 4% in the same subjects and during the same period. Their growth was lower than other subgroups or than other groups because their achievement was higher. The table here shows additional subgroup student growth for Asian, English learners, and students with disabilities. Throughout the city, the graduation rate from 2019 through 2020 grew in most clusters, as you can see on this slide. And in fact, here in the North Atlanta cluster, the graduation rate grew 1.2%. The truth is, we are making progress in Atlanta Public Schools, but our progress must be more than incremental. It has to be more than incremental. It must be aggressive if we want all of our children to be successful. We can only accomplish this with equity as our lens to keep an intentional focus on every child. And so I want to tag team with Dr. Tauhida Baker-Jones to speak a little bit more about what exactly is equity and why it is important. We believe that that's an important conversation, and as we prepared for all of our T's, and this being our inaugural first T, we recognize that this conversation is not only important, but it is critically important that we help to define what equity really means when we say this in Atlanta Public Schools. Dr. Baker-Jones.
Thank you, Dr. Herring, for that introduction and for that setting of the stage. So what is equity for us here in APS really? At APS, we define equity as the quality of being just and fair, regardless of economic, social, cultural, and human differences among and between persons. And so why is equity important? Well, equity is important for us because in order to foster a culture that encourages excellence for all students and staff, we must believe equity has to be at the forefront. Every child should have the opportunity to come to school, have access to effective teaching, have access to effective learning, and have access to safe and clean and welcoming buildings. Our students also deserve to be safe and comfortable as they learn and to be who they are, most importantly. And what is the aim of equity? The aim of equity is to provide students with additional and differentiated resources based on their educational needs. That is the aim, that is our goal for equity. And what's important in APS is that we're not just shooting for equity, we're also shooting for social justice. Our center is the Center for Equity and Social Justice. And for us, social justice is achieved within a school district when the predictive link between demography and outcomes is broken. So that means whether I look at a student who lives in one part of the city versus another part of the city, there should be no differentiation in performance or academic achievement and outcomes when looking at those students. And then what does that mean in terms of our instruction? What does equitable and socially just instruction looks like? Well, equitable instruction looks like experiences that are grounded in being engaging, culturally and linguistically affirming for students, is meaningful, and is also grade level appropriate. And what does that look like when we talk about social justice? Well, it means that we are implementing instructional practices that allow our students to have a voice in the curriculum through supplementation that mitigates race, class, ability, language, gender, and any other boundary that would often hinder our students from accessing the curriculum. And this is what social justice education means for us here in APS, and what our Center for Equity and Social Justice works with our school leaders and district leaders to promote. And so what do we really do here at the Center for Equity and Social Justice? Well, we serve four main purposes here in APS. One is to provide and ensure that the district is providing equitable resources and supports for our students and staff. That includes wraparound services from external partners. Also, managing equity concerns and questions. We serve as a gateway for equity concerns and questions through our Ombuds office, as well as our equity policy analyst. We also have our ED of equitable students, equitable learning environments, who has a teams that focuses primarily on students with special needs, as well as our workplace DEI specialist. And ultimately, our goal is to support the district in realizing its vision through equity, so that equity doesn't just live here in our center, but it permeates throughout every department, division, and school within our organization, with the ultimate goal being to increase academic achievement and growth across all subgroups. And so now that we have a foundation about what our why is, what the imperative is, and also what the work is of our center, we would like to hear from you. And we would like to work together to get this work done, because we're working to undo centuries of systems and structures that none of us created, but all of us have a hand in undoing if our children are going to be successful. And so we need to start building that collaborative bridge of teamwork and togetherness to get this work done. So we've created breakout sessions for small groups, and we have a series of questions that we would like to get your feedback on, as well as how we can shape our work moving forward, on how we can shape our work moving forward. And so we're going to break you up into breakout groups. We're going to ask that our odd number groups answer questions 1 and 3, and our even number groups answers questions 2 and 4. And in each group, you'll have a facilitator and a note taker that has been assigned to your group, as well as a timekeeper. And they're there to listen and to also capture your voice. So now let's talk equity, Atlanta. So I'm going to ask Quentin Stroud, our facilitator and host, to break us into breakout rooms. We will give you a 5-minute warning. You have approximately 25 minutes to talk in your group and answer your 2 questions, and then we'll bring you back to the larger group to share out from your equity discussions. So Quentin. All right, so welcome back, everyone. I had the opportunity to pop in and out of all of your rooms, actually, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2. And I heard some really great dialogue taking place. I appreciate your honesty and your candor. And we're looking forward to hearing what some of the key takeaways that came out of your discussion. So to ensure full transparency in this work, we'd like a few of the small groups to share out. In fact, I'm going to ask if we can have each group share out. Whoever your presenter is or facilitator can feel free to share 1 or 2 takeaways from your group. We'll give each group a minute, about a minute each, to share out. And we will start with group 1. So will the presenter for group 1 share out some key takeaways from your discussion with the group at large?
Sure. We had a really great group. I mean, the folks were really trying to stay with us, even though they had a lot of things going on. And some of the things that came up were some really great ideas around how to utilize our budget in a more resourceful and equitable way. Front loading, a big thing for us was front loading information, and whether that's front loading that information to design the budget, or front loading the support around reading and literacy for students early on, but really, I would say connecting it to the idea of universal design. What do we need for as many students as possible, and then preparing ourselves and front loading those needs ahead of time to try to make things more equitable in the long run. Anyone want to add anything? Did I miss the gist of it? Oh.
All right. Thank you, Group 1. Group 2.
And if you unmute, thank you. Jen is going to be sharing from Group 2. If you can unmute Jen for us, that'd be great.
I think, hi guys, I'm Jen Birch. I want to preface it with saying that I also, I do literacy work in the Carver cluster, but I also have kids in the North Atlanta cluster. So I kind of have two very different viewpoints. So for the first question, number 2, we had said we want more of a partnership between APS and the city to instill more early literacy skills before the kids get to school, so they are ready to learn, because that's the most important part, getting these kids ready to learn. The second part, for getting our kids ready to be global learners, North Atlanta cluster has done a really good job of providing like a K through 12 IB cluster, where they've developed global and inquisitors and thinkers from K through 12, I think. But in other clusters, I think there still needs to be a drive to, to put that point on literacy, questioning, being able to do project-based learning, I think is really important. And I think the group as a whole, I might have left something out, but I think those were our 2 big takeaways.
Yeah, that was great. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Jen. I appreciate you. Group 3.
For Group 3, Karen Solomon will be doing the sharing out for Group 3. So thank you, Karen.
Sure. Hello. So for the first question, the key takeaways, the first question about the graduate, I guess the characteristics of an APS graduate. Some of the key takeaways that we came up with were that for an academically prepared student, that we would need that the district would need to staff the most highly effective teachers and have schools with adequate or the best leadership teams that partner well with the communities, and that the resources and supports are there for the whole student in order to be appropriately engaged. Touched a lot on how important the relationships are between the families and the schools, and to specifically the teachers, so that needs can be caught and addressed at a really organic or grassroots level, and gone from there. Let's see, for the second question about belongingness and affirmation, what should we start, stop, continue, and why? There really wasn't anything about stopping, but more about continuing or expanding on things like arts and extracurriculars. There was, expanding things like resources for non-English native English speakers, finding ways to foster common ground between students and engaging different interests, and really working on things like promoting growth mindset was a really great one that we talked about. So.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
And I think we're on Group 4.
Hi, good evening. We are Group 4, and Lizzie Wicklin will be sharing out on behalf of our group. Thank you so much, Lizzie, for sharing.
Hi, our first question was about equitable resources. We talked about looking at a root cause analysis, providing better guidance for students. The example there was that we have a lot of great programs, dual enrollment, the ACA, but students don't necessarily seem aware, and the schools don't seem to do a great job of identifying students. So how do we do a better job of providing guidance, particularly in a case where a parent is not being proactive for the student? And then partnerships, as another group described, partnering with the city, with the county, and with other non-governmental or private partnerships too, but to increase wraparound services and that type of thing. We also talked about the APS Portrait of a Graduate, and to do those things, felt like programming within our cluster needs to be done with fidelity. particularly IB funding and DLI funding. And there was some concern over how the district looks at equitable funding and understanding that from the large schools perspective. So having the largest populations in schools, and how does that, particularly since we have very few, I think we're down to 1.5 Title I schools, how does that break out? How are our Title students receiving support from the district? And we had a comment about making sure learners are given diverse perspectives. So where are capabilities for cross-cluster collaboration of students and for students to be able to collaborate with other students across the district?
Thank you, Lizzie. Group 5.
Sure. So I'm Katisha Kennebrew, and I will represent for Group 5, which had fantastic comments. Our question number 1, how do we ensure that all students in Atlanta Public Schools feel like they belong and are affirmed? We had great comments that surrounded around ensuring that our students were reflected in the curriculum. One study, a Stanford study, was referenced and shared throughout the group that really speaks to students having increased performance when they feel included and referenced in the curriculum. And so another comment lifted up that starts early. So ensuring that our students are having access to libraries, whether at school in the media center or personal libraries that include them in the storylines, in the characters, etc. And also understanding that many students of color start school approximately 50,000 words behind, just a connection to even being able to feel like you're represented in the instruction and in your instructional materials will help to enhance that vocabulary acquisition for our early learners. We had another comment lifted up in feelings of belongingness that really centered around our gifted courses. And what was reflected was that many of our gifted courses are racially and culturally mixed. However, even our Asian and Latino students don't see themselves often in the curriculum and instruction. And we had a representative from our world languages area mention that North Atlanta has one of the district's largest linguistically diverse student populations, and how we should make sure that we leverage and celebrate that difference, not just identify it, but celebrate it. And one parent shared that she appreciated, even in her virtual experience, where a teacher did go above and beyond to share via SEL, which is our social emotional learning instruction, as well as other ways in which cultural differences were celebrated. Our question 3 really centered around that graduate profile, ensuring that APS students are academically prepared, and lots of great comments were lifted up. We had a really fantastic group, and what was noted was we should make sure, yes, that our students are ready for college and career, and college if that's a choice. But what was lifted up was this concept of ensuring that our students also are equipped with a trade. And what was noted was that in APS often there's an appearance of CTA being offered in regional concentrations, the West and the South, and ensuring that, because we don't really know the future, really having an emphasis on making sure that our students are, yes, academically ready for college if that is their choice, but also learning these other skills that may even advance them in their college career earlier, but also be able to equip them with opportunities to supplement their income and just make them a more robust employee. And just as we close, a mom of a rising third grader mentioned that there's no idea what types of jobs her daughter is going to have access to. So really emphasizing critical thinking and resourceful skills and abilities to continuously learn, and really reinforcing drive and a respect for other cultures and backgrounds. This concept of intercultural competence was really enforced in both questions, and really showing that that is how we're going to ensure that our students are ready to compete globally, and bringing those experiences into the district so that our students don't necessarily have to physically travel internationally in order to benefit from global experiences. So lots and lots of comments, but that kind of summarizes the really rich conversation that we had.
Great job, thank you. And if you could drop the link to that chat, to that study that was shared, the Stanford study, that would be awesome as well.
Sure.
And so, and last but definitely not least, I'm gonna tag in our Espanol, our Spanish speaking group, and will the representative for that group like to share out?
Oh, hello. I am going to go quickly just through maybe like 2 questions. So in terms of the feeling of belongingness and affirmation, we actually had the SEL curriculum brought up as well, and trying to see if that is culturally and linguistically responsive, and how the district is rolling that out. Like, the titles have been representative, but that's only one component, and they'd like to see a little bit more. And question number 4, APS graduate ideal profile. They'd like to see perhaps empathy brought into that profile, because when you are looking at the profile, it almost seems to come from an American or individualistic approach or lens, and perhaps we want to see it from a different lens. And that's it.
Great, Liv, thank you. All right, thank you everyone for, like I said, your takeaways, your sharing, your honesty and candor. This is the first of many discussions, but I do want to thank you for your time, your respect for differing perspectives, and your willingness to be honest and open and maybe even uncomfortable for the purpose of a good, healthy conversation, to find real solutions on behalf of every student that we serve. We agree that it will take hard collaborative work and dialogue across lines of difference. And you can help this, one, by responding to our survey. I know that time was given in many of your groups to do that. You'll also receive that survey via your email. And I'll ask someone to also drop the link in the chat for you so that it can be at your convenience. Again, equity is at the forefront in Atlanta Public Schools to foster a culture that encourages excellence for all of our students and staff. And to reach this ideal, we will truly have equity and social justice for all. It will take all of us together, working across our lines of difference for the better of all of our children. So I want to thank you all for joining us this evening, giving you all back some time and moments to share in the evening. We're going to end a little early, but I do want to thank you for participating. Thank you for joining. Please take a look at our equity homepage for future events and activities that will come up. And if you register for this event, we have your email. We will also keep you in the loop of things as they become available. So thank you all and have a great evening.